Kitco Mining special coverage of BMO's Global Metals, Mining and Critical Minerals is brought to you by First Majestic Silver.
Hello and welcome back to Kitco Mining with me, Paul Harris, here at the 2025 BMO Global Metals Mining and Critical Minerals event in Hollywood in Florida. Gold company results are starting to excite, but are the exploration juniors being left out in the cold? To discuss this with me today is former Kitco Mining CEO of the Year, Scott Berdahl, CEO of Snowline Gold. Scott, welcome back to Kitco.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Now, 2024 was another very successful year for the company with continued drilling success at your Valley Gold deposit in Yukon in Canada, and you put out an initial resource estimate, all of which helped propel the company to become a $1 billion Canadian market capitalization. How does that feel?
I mean, we're on our way, but we've got a lot of work to do. So it's great. It's nice to get some market recognition, but I think I think we've arguably discovered more than the market has at this point. So we're keen to keep pushing and keep getting the story out there.
Now, one of the headline news announcements last year was obviously that Maiden resource I mentioned. It had more than 7 million ounces across all resource categories at more than 1 gram per tonne of gold. How important is that as an initial resource in terms of setting the valuation of the company and, of course, setting the future trajectory of the company?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think it's we're very pleased to come out with that number, an initial resource estimate. That's based on just 2 years of drilling, ultimately 2022, 2023, and just 28,000 meters of drilling. And so I think that itself speaks to the quality of the deposit, that because it's near surface and because it's so continuous in 3 dimensions, it requires a lot less drilling to define the resource, and a lot less. Every step of the process, from advancing through studies to even mining, is simpler when you have that kind of geometry and that kind of consistency and those kind of grades. Just getting that out there was huge for us. But we're also keen to show not just the upside in terms of our continued drilling. I mentioned 28,000 meters, but we have 25,000 more to add to that resource estimate, a combination of infill and an expansion around it. But we're also keen to show why that those numbers are unique in terms of the qualities of the deposit. So there are a lot of deposits out there that have nice numbers tied to them. Not all of those will become mines. We're pretty convinced that ours will, and or that it will make a very nice mine. And so we want to keep pushing past just resource upgrades as well.
Now, 7 million ounces is a really good first flag in the sand to have. The question, of course, is how big could it potentially get?
Yeah, I mean, we're figuring that out, and like I say, we'll have an updated resource estimate out on the back of all of our results, and so that'll be prior to kicking off drilling next season, which we anticipate in May. And then we're seeing some interesting, in a lot of places we've kind of chased at least the near surface high grade to its extent, but we're still chasing open edges of the system. And we're also stepping out. We had a hole out recently, V24 115, where we stepped out 300 meters and drilled basically into this hillside that we've always thought of as a constraint on the deposit, and we found some nice grades in there. They're not the headline center of the Valley deposit grades that we've kind of become known for, but there's 100 meters of half gram in there, and with a 15-meter run that's over 2 grams per ton. And interestingly, there's a phase. It's a polyphase intrusion that hosts it just means, basically not just one intrusion came in, but a bunch of different pulses of magma came in and created what's now the Valley intrusion. And one of those phases of magma, it cooked the rocks around it, and that's our leading hypothesis, basically the source of the fluids and why Valley has such uniquely high grades. We're seeing that, a dike of that material way out in this hole 115, and that's what's driving the mineralization in that hole. So it redefines our geological understanding, and it shows that there are a lot of volumes of the Valley intrusion itself, big 3-dimensional volumes that we just haven't looked at yet and haven't tested yet. And so to have that and some numbers from an adjacent hole 300 meters away, hole 114, also showing gram plus mineralization. We don't know that pulse that formed the main part of the Valley deposit is the only pulse within that intrusion, and so that's one thing that we're keen to get back out there and test in 2025.
It does seem that oftentimes when a junior explorer puts out a resource, people tend to sort of peg them or anchor them in their thinking that way. How important is the continued exploration success you're having there with, as you say, the step outs and other things to, I suppose in some ways you could say, to sort of keep people guessing as to what it could be, rather than being, let's say, pigeonholed, there's 7 million ounces there, we can think about something else now?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think, the expansion potential is there, and also regionally. We set out to explore a district. We launched the company around a district. Valley was an interesting showing, but it was just that. It was a showing. It was 4 grams chip sample across an outcrop, about 4 meters. And so we launched the company thinking, okay, can we unlock a district here? Like, these rocks have so many parallels to some of the best camps in the world. And we've just scratched the surface in terms of what we think is out there. But that said, I don't think it's crucially important to blow past 7 and we need to get to 14 or something like that. I think that even if we weren't to find a single ounce past the resource we put out last summer, we would have a very strong path towards value creation just with that initial mineral resource estimate. Like, 7 is not a small number. And the attributes of the system, which I touched on, the continuity, the high grades, the highest grades right at surface, very low stripping ratio, that sort of a thing. These make for a very attractive deposit economically, and so I think that if you were to ignore everything else, and if there were somehow to be no expansion upside even within the valley system itself, I think we'd still be sitting in a very good place in terms of, here's an exceptional deposit that we can bring forward and try to push that through and de-risk and ultimately develop that as efficiently as we can.
Okay. Now, as you mentioned, Scott, Valley isn't the only sort of target you have on your property. You've got quite an extensive property. There's a number of targets there. You mentioned the drilling plan you've got coming together for this season. How will that break down between continuing to work up Valley and also potentially devoting more attention to some of the other targets and possibilities you have at your sort of rogue project overall?
Yeah, I mean, Valley will in a lot of ways remain our main focus, and some of that, there's continued infill to be done there. There are continued open edges of the system to be chased. There are, some nice blue sky things like this hole 115 to keep chasing there, and so that remains front and center. But we'll also be looking at some of the less kind of exciting hand-to-wallet things that ultimately build value and de-risk the project, like stepping out, doing geotechnical holes, doing a lot of the data collection and data gathering that we need to inform more advanced studies that can really move the project forward and closer to production. So that's certainly a part of it. And then on the district scale, we're pretty exciting. Every year that we've been out there has turned up more and more targets. They keep coming online. And so, we've tested some and have to go back to the drawing board in places. We've hit mineralization in others, like our Jupiter target. That system continues to grow, and we've continued to find showings like it. But we're really, at this point, most excited about the potential for the Rogue Plutonic Complex. Basically, a whole cluster of these intrusions that are genetically related to Valley. We're seeing similar geochemical signatures coming off of them, not just the gold anomalism, but the fingerprint around the gold with bismuth and tellurium. And we want to continue to explore that. And, Valley seems to be a major foot in the door in terms of unlocking that district. And so it demonstrates the potential. It shows that these rocks can produce deposits like that. The preconditions and the geological conditions were all there to make it happen. And so we know that it can, and we want to see if it happened elsewhere. At the same time, it lowers the bar for what else we need to find out there. It seems very much to us like something that can carry its own weight from an economical point of view, and therefore, it can help some friends along, so to speak, in terms of other deposits that might not have been one-off discoveries, but if they're within a certain range of the facilities that would go to support Valley, then they may well be viable.
Is there the possibility, Scott, that Valley isn't the best that you have in that district?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the first kicks at the can, and so to think that it's the be all and end all is I think would be misguided at this point. It may well be, who knows? But I like to think about the Carlin trend and how that was discovered and how that unfolded. The initial Carlin deposit is by no means the story out there in terms of what built the Carlin Trend. And were you to have discovered that, yeah, it's a nice deposit, exciting mine came out of it and so on, but you'd miss some of the biggest deposits on the planet if you were just to say, tools down, we're developing this, and let's stop there. And it's also interesting to look at the timelines. Discoveries are still being made in Nevada along those trends in an area that's been heavily explored now for decades. And so, we're not terribly dissuaded by having taken a couple of swings at regional targets and not, drilled right into another valley. Like, it's quite exceptional to have that high of grades, that big of a system, literally outcropping, and just being able to walk up and sample the outcrop for the first time ever and put the first drill holes into it. So. Valley was a dream scenario, not just for the deposit that's there, but just for the circumstances around being able to find it. And so we're kind of back into, regular exploration here, but in some pretty exceptional rocks. And so, yeah, we want to keep exploring this district. We know that it may take a few more kicks at the can, but we really don't think Valley's alone out there.
With 7 million ounces in the bag already and a $1 billion Canadian market capitalization, what moves the needle for Snowline now going forward? I imagine everyone's got an opinion and is giving you the benefit of their advice. What do you need to do next to get a meaningful, increase in Snowline?
I think any number of catalysts could come up, including just kind of general market conditions. We've sort of lagged for external circumstances for, I would say, the better part of a year now. We really haven't taken part in the run up in the gold price of $900 to $1,000 since we hit our current levels in terms of market capitalization and sort of appreciation for what we have there. And obviously the background itself has helped. But in terms of what we're doing and what we have control over, pushing forward, putting out an updated mineral resource estimate. We have commenced work on preliminary economic analysis. We don't have a fixed timeline for that, but we're keen to get those numbers in front of people because I mentioned that there are a lot of deposits out there, and some will never see the light of day. This one is really unique in a lot of ways that could translate to very promising economics, and so that's something that we don't want to hide behind. We want to get in front of it and put it out there and continue to progress down that road. So I think that'll be a big de-risking event and hopefully turn a lot of heads. Still get a lot of pushback on the location of the deposit. People saying this is too remote, nothing will ever come of it. Anyone watching this who thinks that way, I would really encourage them to go into our deck and even look at that initial mineral resource estimate and look at that starter pit. It's about 2 million ounces indicated, another 0.9 million ounces inferred. Average grade overall is around 2.35 grams per ton. Stripping ratio is effectively 0. There are no other starter pits on the planet that I'm aware of like that. And, there are mines in a lot more tricky circumstances that are going ahead and that have gone ahead and, have successfully been built. I think that hurdle has been cleared. So,
you mentioned PEA, preliminary economic assessment work is underway. What sort of operation are you sort of looking at, contemplating in terms of throughput, in terms of potential annual production profile?
Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out, and I think that we'll want to look at different ways to optimize that because there really are a lot of options on the table when you have your kind of bowl of soup exposed to surface like that. Whether you want to go in there with multiple shovels and really hit it hard and get very big production numbers for those first few years and a very quick return on capital, or if you want to bootstrap and go in there. But unfortunately, it seems to be a project where all those options are available. And, I think a pretty reasonable base case is what we envisioned even in the mineral resource estimate, just for calculating the cost factors around cutoff grade. And that was basically a single shovel operation, 25,000 tons per day. And that gives you about 9 million tons per year. Ultimately, to chew through that initial mineral resource estimate, you'd be looking at about 17.1 or 2 years of production, pulling out an average of around 425,000 ounces per year over that kind of a mine life, with the waste ore ratio or stripping ratio, 0.9 to 1. But again, very front loaded. So 40% of the material, 40% of the gold is in the first 14% of material that you dig out of the ground there. So for those first few years, it works out to about 4.3 years to get through those initial 2.9 million ounces that I mentioned. And again, the average grades north of 2 grams per ton. really, with that single shovel, you'd be pulling out around 689,000 ounces per year for 4.3 years, right? Right from the get-go. So
that can pay for a lot of infrastructure. In terms of the sort of concepts you're sketching out, obviously, one of the big news items in the Yukon in the recent past has been the leach pad failure at the Eagle mine, and I know we've spoken about that. To what extent or not does that impact the development path that you potentially might take and how you design the operation? Are there certain things you can't do or that are closed off because of that?
Well, I think the main implications and potential repercussions of that event are around heap leach facilities and how those are constructed, and we'll see. There's an ongoing commission into investigating the causes of that, and the Yukon government has committed to basically looking at the results of that inquiry and incorporating that into the regulatory framework to ensure that kind of thing doesn't happen again, which seems like a pretty reasonable way forward. Obviously, we don't want that kind of a thing to happen again. But really, we don't have any heap leach components envisioned in our operation. It's possible that way down the line, one would want to look at the low-grade halo around what we're talking about in our current resource, which is a mill-focused scenario, and look at heap leach then. But that's really nothing that would drive any meaningful impact in the NPV as you look at it today. Lower life, lower margin, or lower grade, lower margin, way out in terms of the cash flow. And so, yeah, that's there's no real obvious conflicts or hurdles put up in terms of our project. And I think ultimately, it highlights the need in the territory, for quality projects to go ahead. I mean, we have the geology, we have great rocks. There are, some great companies doing really good things there. And yeah, I think that, my personal opinion, obviously, is that Valley would be a great asset to the Yukon for a long time.
And potentially a great asset for another company, because of course another possible outcome is that Snowline won't be the company that develops that. We seem to be entering into another M&A phase in the gold space. A big transaction was announced last night, and of course Newmont has recently completed selling 6 of its mines, generated a lot of interest there, and so therefore a lot of companies frustrated that they couldn't acquire new mines. How do you see the M&A vibe at the moment, and is that do you see the disconnect in terms of the high gold price and the valuation of juniors such as yourself? And does that give an arbitrage to the gold companies that are producing, that are benefiting more from the higher gold price? Will that perhaps eventually prompt an offer for Snowline?
I mean, we'll see. I think that absolutely it does create an arbitrage opportunity. Yeah, it's kind of an unusual bull market, if you wanted to call it that, just in terms of the lag that even it took for the majors to start to get some appreciation on the back of margins, and just sort of the length of time it took for belief to set in that, okay, these are real. And I would still argue that we're still only getting there, but nonetheless the majors have sort of departed from where most of the juniors are. And I think it creates some opportunity there, and it's certainly like any bull market, it's heated up the M&A landscape. And I think that even Newmont getting through their process has sort of unclogged the doors and maybe paved the way to transactions like that last night with Calibre and Equinox. So I'm curious to see what'll happen. There certainly seems to be interest, and you look at just production profiles for pretty much any major, and there's been underinvestment in exploration in the junior space for so long, and that continues for the very reasons you're talking about. And so to see, okay, where are the next mines? Like Newmont, for example, just cleared out all their tier 2 assets, and I think it's a good strategy on a lot of levels. But okay, where do you find more tier 1 assets? Like, what's out there globally that fits that criteria? And of course, there's just this focus on quality, but yet there are very few really high quality deposits that are coming down the pipes right now. So for Snowline and for Snowline shareholders, I think it's a fantastic environment to be in. I think it's a great place to be. I think we have strong defenses in terms of insider ownership position, in terms of additional voting rights that we have. And so I think we're very well protected against any sort of hostile arbitrage, if you wanted to call it that. But nonetheless, we're bringing forward something and de-risking something that has a lot of value, not just in terms of its intrinsic value, but also a premium for uniqueness.
Now, you mentioned Equinox Gold announcing the acquisition of Calibri Mining, which was announced last night. The two companies there, and we spoke with Ross Beatty, the chairman of Equinox, earlier at this event. He talked about the good fit between the two companies. You used the words good fit as well. Great Bear is proving to be a good fit with Kinross Gold. Who would be a good fit for Snowline?
We'll see. That's a great question. I'll have to get back to you on that one. But I think there are definitely some companies that are doing great things out there, and I think that we could, with good conscience, hand a project out to a number of different groups out there, and would be excited to become their shareholders. But I think we've got a long way to go before we get there. I mean, we're sitting on something pretty special here, and we're pushing it ahead internally, and really that's our baseline. Like, M&A is not a foregone conclusion for us, but the fact that this is a very special asset, and that the fact that we have a very clear path towards de-risking, advancing, and ultimately bringing this into production, that is on the table, regardless of how you shake it. So that's our baseline for now, and we want to just keep pushing down that path as quickly as we can.
You've obviously had sort of great exploration success, and that's translated into great market success. Mentioned, $1 billion market cap. To what extent do you think that is helping draw more investors back to the gold exploration space, or does that beam of light not shine very far from you?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely helped, and we've seen, I wouldn't even call it a gold rush, nothing like we've seen in previous cycles, but certainly it's brought some eyes to the Yukon. It's brought some eyes to this type of gold system that we've been exploring for. But no, it hasn't been a very bright light. It hasn't really reached the general retail audience, especially just outside of the mining space at all. And so it's still a fairly narrow beam, and I think there's a lot of potential if we can sustain these gold prices or even go higher. If miners can demonstrate good margins, and if M&A heats up, I think there are a lot of factors that could really bring more attention to the space. And we've not just Snowline, but as a sector, we've hardly moved the needle in terms of what's available out there in global financial markets. Obviously, we're a very small minnow in a big lake, and so it'd be interesting to see attention come back to the space.
You mentioned the big catalyst coming up this year is the resource update. You said that would be before the next drilling season. So when will that be? April, May?
Well, we'll be kicking off drilling May 15th, and so we should be able to have that resource update out well before that.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Scott Berdahl, thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
And we have a lot more to come from the 2025 BMO Global Metals Mining and Critical Minerals Conference here in Hollywood in Florida. So hit that subscribe button. I'm Paul Harris, and this is Kitco Mining.
Kitco Mining special coverage of BMO's Global Metals, Mining and Critical Minerals is brought to you by First Majestic Silver.